Good morning, and welcome to the July 17th, 2025 meeting of the Downtown Design Commission. My name is Kayla Copeland, and I'm the chair of the commission. The agenda and documents are located at https://okc.primegov.com/public/portal. You would then select the Downtown Design Commission meeting, then click on an agenda item, and the relevant documents will come up below the item. Please see the agenda for additional information regarding meeting procedures and the review process. If you're parked in the Sheridan Walker parking garage north of John Rex Elementary School or in the Art District parking garage south of City Hall, staff can provide a parking validation ticket to you. Keith, will you please call roll?
Copeland.
Here.
Schmidt.
Here.
Black.
Here.
Brandon.
Here.
We have quorum.
Thank you. So the item number 2 is approval of the minutes.
Move to approve the minutes.
Brandon, second.
It passes. Item number 3 is cases withdrawn. We have none. Item number 4 are continuance request. We have none. Item number 5, consent docket, none. Item number 6, cases for individual consideration. We'll start with Bricktown. And item A is BCA 2500004 at 4 East Sheridan Avenue.
Good morning, Laura Griggs, Planning Department. I'm going to run through the pictures. This is a case that is in Bricktown for a sign. And in this picture, the yellow is showing where the sign is proposed to go up at the top. And these were included in your packet. I just wanted to run through them for everyone that's here. Some of you might be very familiar with this building. Maybe your office used to be in Bricktown, so you might have used to work near it or in it or whatever. And it is coming before you for a couple of reasons. One is because of the size of the sign, and the other is because of the guideline for not painting unpainted brick. And I will go back to there. So this is a request to paint a 100 square foot sign on unpainted brick masonry near the top of the east facade of this building. This is on East Sheridan Avenue, just east of the elevated railroad track. The building was constructed in 1906, and it's a little over 31,000 square feet. So there was some history included in this, which I don't need to go through, that talked about several other applications that had come through for different things on this building over time. And the biggest one being back in 2014 that had a half a page of approved work that was done. And so under regulations, the items that were listed under that deal with the fact that in Bricktown, they can have a maximum of 250 square foot of attached wall signs, but no more than 10% of the overall wall area of the building, which is different than downtown. In downtown, we can have 400 square feet, and we've been having that internal discussion, but Bricktown had 250 square foot previously before we changed the sign code. So there's discussion in here about a ghost sign. This originally came in, they were talking about doing a ghost sign, because in Bricktown, they actually allow signs to be painted over ghost signs. We don't do that in downtown, but that's how the regulations are worded. And because documentation was never uncovered showing that there had been a sign there before, this was not reviewed as a ghost sign. So There was discussion about the existing signs that are on the building and one that is on the opposite side that came through many years ago and got approved as a ghost sign. So one of the concerns listed in that discussion is with the approval of this one, there's only 5.75 square foot of signage left for any other tenant in the building to get up to the 250 square feet. So in guidelines, there was the discussion from the Building Conservation and Rehabilitation Guidelines about not painting unpainted brick. And you'll hear that later on another agenda item we're going to discuss where I actually cite the same section. So it's not just for signs, it's for any painting on unpainted brick. In this particular case, and included in your packet, was some information from a structural engineer who did research. We normally get this detail, but they did research on the brick itself, consulted with the Brick Industry Association to get guidance on painting unpainted brick. And so there were 4 steps that they included, dealing with hiring a reputable painter, experienced with old brick, painting old brick, talk about cleaning it, talk about the primer, and talk about the paint that they need to use. One of the concerns about this is it talked about cleaning with the wire brush, and staff does not usually support abrasive cleaning methods, which would include using a wire brush on historic brick, because you can end up damaging the brick itself by removing the finish on the brick. But obviously they consulted people who know what they're talking about on brick. Proposal to paint the brick is still not consistent with the applicable guidelines in that the traditional masonry surfaces, features, and details will not be retained. It should be noted that the city does not have the capability to ensure that the 4 steps that were listed be strictly followed once a sign permit is issued. As the issue of painting unpainted brick is a guideline, you can decide it's okay, modify it, or whatever, and it's before you, and you decide on guidelines. It doesn't have to go to the Board of Adjustment. A similar type of wall sign was painted at the top of the opposite elevation of this building in 2015, but it was painted over brick that had already been painted. And that was the ghost sign discussion that I had earlier. So it came in as a ghost sign and was painted over where that sign had been. And that is not unique to this building. You'll see that on various buildings in Bricktown and even in downtown, where signs had been painted on the buildings in this fashion. Staff believes that the subject guidelines address valid concerns over potential damage to the brick facade. For this reason, staff is recommending denial of the request to paint this sign. However, should the commission feel that the precautions recommended by the applicant's engineer are sufficient to address these concerns, the option remains for the commission to approve the request, but only with the inclusion of the recommended precautions, and that's at the recommendation of staff. So we give you 2 options, the first one being to deny it because it doesn't meet the regulations and guidelines. The second would be to approve it with the conditions, and then we listed all of those 4 that were included in that letter from the engineer. The applicant is here if you have any questions for him, or do you have questions for me?
Any questions for staff? No questions for staff.
Okay. Oh, yeah, please, by all means. And just, your name is fine, just print your name down there.
Thank you.
If you could identify yourself.
My name is Chad Godwin. I'm a tenant in the building and a business partner with the owner. We do have an option to put up a metal sign on the building that meets the guidelines, but I really love Bricktown. I love the historic look, and so I chose the more difficult path to get the painted brick to match the existing property. And we did hire a structural engineer because the issue with unpainted brick is they're worried about vapor, if the brick can breathe. However, this part of the building is a parapet wall, and so it has air on both sides. So that's really not a factor. And the structural engineer, I don't think he wrote that in the report, but I did take the extra steps to hire a structural engineer. And it's really has more to do with honoring the historic Bricktown building than throwing up a cheesy metal sign with lights like the Melting Pot did.
So, and that was discussed last month when we had to cancel the meeting because of lack of quorum. What options they had for them to be able to go forward, which would have been to attach a sign, which could have been metal, to the building itself. That would be through the mortar. And that's what he's referring to.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just saying thank you. Any questions or comments?
I've got some questions for Mr. Godwin. Yeah?
Say that again?
Was your name Mr. Godwin?
Yes.
Mr. Godwin. So, First Turn Capital
Yes, sir.
takes up how much area of the building?
That's a good question. It takes up the third floor, which is approximately 6,000 square feet.
So about a quarter of the rentable area.
Yeah.
And their sign will now take up about a third of the usable signage area on the building.
They're allowed 250 square feet, and this is 100 square feet.
Okay.
Yeah. The other back side of the building that has the ghost sign in it that is currently says J.E. Dunn Construction, that's a beautiful sign, but it does take up a large amount of the usable square footage.
And J.E. Dunn is currently occupying this building?
No, they moved out. And
You have another application that's come in on that side that, to replace that sign. When it was originally approved in 2015, it was interpreted as a ghost sign, and square footage for ghost signs don't count towards signage. However, that interpretation is not still valid. We have the new sign code, and so that is an issue that will be discussed next month at your meeting because their square footage will totally count.
So we're seeing one sign application today and another sign application next month?
They came in separately. This one has been in, and I apologize for not knowing the date, this one has been in since May 7th.
Yeah, I originally thought I had the other sign, and then we started going through the lease agreements, and it happened that the landlord left it in their contract, and then they were like, oh, well, we're gonna use it now. And they offered to sell it to me for $40,000, but I was like, I'll just paint the other side. But I do want to add, the sign's not going to be a logo. It's going to be the classic Bricktown block letters, black background, white painting.
Well, I like that you're matching what is already there and that you've gone through the extra effort to investigate your brick and make sure you have the right application. So I appreciate that. It is curious to me that there's existing space, but obviously your lease isn't going to allow you to use that sign space. So we will deal with that when it comes. But do y'all have any other comments on this?
You've gone to the effort, and I appreciate the fact hiring a structural engineer. It shows that you're invested in doing this correctly. You've got a listing of items. It's implied that you're going to do all of these items. There was a comment that there's no way that the city can enforce it once a permit is issued. Would you be willing, as a part of your permit, to provide documentation that basically certifies, from your standpoint, that this process is being adhered to? And I agree with you with respect. If it's multi-wide masonry and the inside face of the parapet is also brick, it's going to breathe.
Yeah.
So that's very helpful. But using these paints that are going to set yourself up for success are going to be important as well. And I like this more than an applied sign myself. I would have agreed that to use the other one if we didn't know that this was coming next month.
Yeah, I can agree to perhaps have the structural engineer come back out and sign a letter saying that it was installed or painted properly with the right type of paint. Because I think that's the biggest issue.
And then they can provide it to staff, and we will put it with the file.
Yeah, and it is odd because when I go up there and look at it, you got to get on the roof, you can lean over, and you can see where a ghost sign was before, but in 2014, they had to go and re-grout the brick, and the owner said that they did a lot of acid washing on it to get all that out, to get the grout. So there was a sign there at one time, but there's no evidence of it other than very faint paint. I tried showing it to Michael Philbrook, and he said if it walks like a duck, talks like a duck, it's a duck. I said, okay.
Great, well, thank you.
It gets
Yeah.
confusing because we deal with ghost signs totally different in downtown. And so now that you do Bricktown, we kind of have to make sure we include all the explanation to you because they're allowed to actually paint over with a new sign where a ghost sign was.
Right,
Thank you.
thank you. Would someone like to do a motion? Oh, anybody in the audience also want to speak on this? Okay.
I will make a motion, I will move to approve the application on the basis that the project meets the regulations. Sorry. I will move to approve the application on the basis that the project meets the regulations and guidelines of the Bricktown Core Development Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in section C and D of the staff report, with the condition that the applicant shall follow all the steps in the installation of the proposed sign, including having the structural engineer certify that they were completed after the work was done. Item 1, hire a reputable professional painter who has experience painting old brick. Item 2, thoroughly clean and wire brush the surface to be painted and allowed to completely dry. Item 3, apply a high-grade quality primer that is appropriate to use on historical brick. Item 4, do not use traditional paint. Use high-grade mineral paint that maintains the brick's breathability and will chemically bond to the surface of the brick, but not form a film.
Brandon, second.
Thank you.
It passes. Okay, and we'll move to downtown cases, item B, which is DTCA-24-00052 R1 at 608 Northwest 9th Street.
Sorry, I lost the arrow. Hang on just a second.
You're right.
Screen's not working. There it is. Oops. Oh, wow. I left a number out of that one. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you. Laura Griggs again, Planning Department. This is a revision to an application that came in for some work last year, and unfortunately, the signs were overlooked when the approval was given. So there are 4 signs. They need variances for 3 of them because they're in the right-of-way, and we'll kind of talk through that. So this is for St. Anthony's. You've had several things that you've seen recently, all the work that they're doing, and this shows where the signs are going. So the 3 signs that are on the north, 2 of them are on the pedestrian bridge, and 1 of them is on a planter retaining wall on the south side of 9th Street. Those are all in the right-of-way and need variances. The sign on the south side of the building doesn't need a variance, but that is included with the sign package. So this is the approximate location of where it will go. When I was out in the field, and I should have asked the architect, and I can ask him, have they done the work here? Okay, excellent, okay. Because I got out there and thought, man, have they done the work? Is this being replaced? So they have finished it. This is approximately where that sign would go. And then you have the pedestrian bridge. And so they were wanting one on each side. And yes, those arrows are in the proposed sign, because staff was asking me, why are there these arrows in your description? I'm like, because that's on the sign. It's pointing people where to go. So this was an interesting day. The sky was marvelous because the storm was rolling in, so I had to brighten things up. But we have the signs on both sides of the bridge. I had a problem when I went to the south side because it's all blocked off, so it's going somewhere in this vicinity by the entrance because they were doing all the work, but they don't need a variance for that one. And that one normally wouldn't have even come to you because doesn't exceed size or anything like that. And one of the projects you approved recently involves the adjacent roadway that you might recall, it had been vacated a long time ago, and they're closing, actually closing to traffic the south half of that road, which is the work that they've started on right now, working on new entrances to the parking garage. So right now, if you go, you will see a lot of work going on that you guys have had before you. And so I will go back to, we'll land on that one. We've had a lot of both administrative and commission approval to St. Anthony's since 2007 when the design district was formed. And we will probably continue to get requests before you happily because they're staying in their location and not moving on like all the other hospitals that we had previously. So I've included in here all the information about signs in the right-of-way, as well as our regulations and guidelines dealing with signs. Basically, we say they have to conform to the sign code. Well, the sign code says you're not supposed to have signs in the right-of-way. As you can see by the locations where they're proposed, they're actually not where they're in the way of a pedestrian or they're not in the way of a car, and they in fact are trying to direct both pedestrians and automobiles to where they might be trying to go. Because there's a lot going on, a lot of different medical office buildings in that area. So when you get past the 10 pages of regulations that I had to insert, because there are all those tables, you will see where I say that sign number 2, sign 3A and sign 3B are considered incidental signs. Okay, so sign 2 is the one on the south side that doesn't need a variance. Signs 3A and 3B are the ones that are on the pedestrian walkway. So when they came in, they submitted a sign permit. Those were voided out because they don't even need a sign permit because they're considered incidental signs, but they're in the right-of-way. They still need a CA anyway, and they also need a variance. So this was a little confusing because of everyone's still getting used to our new sign code. None of the issues on the variances deal with size because they totally comply with the size allowances. And in the Board of Adjustment application that is going on August the 7th, they included the following. The building is situated at a significant elevation above street level and is set back in a way that limits visibility from Northwest 9th Street. Due to this topography, signage mounted within the property boundaries fails to provide adequate visibility for motorists and pedestrians. Without the ability to place signs in the right-of-way, the building cannot be effectively identified from the street. The proposed signs are placed for clear directional and identification purposes. They do not obstruct visibility, interfere with traffic, or pose a public safety concern. Allowing these signs enhances wayfinding on a hospital campus, supporting public safety and reducing traffic confusion, without undermining the intent of the sign code or the city's comprehensive planning goals. And I kind of mentioned that when I was showing you the locations. So staff recommends that this application be approved with the condition that the applicant obtain a variance from the Board of Adjustment from the prohibition of signs in the right-of-way for signs 1, 3A, and 3B, and, separate vote, provide a recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustment for a variance from the prohibition of signs in the right-of-way for signs 1, 3A, and 3B. And we have the sign person here if you have any questions, and the architect if you have any questions, or do you have any questions for me?
In one of your documents, you state,
I'm having a really hard time. I don't know if you can
In-
turn that up or.
better? I might steal one of the other ones. In one of your documents, you say sign 1 and 2 are freestanding signs, but it looks like it's,
So signs
Wall-mounted?
attached to walls or fences are considered freestanding signs.
all right. I could-
And I had to find it because I'm like, did we keep that in the new sign code? And we did. So yes.
That's fine, thank you.
Any other questions? Stop. Anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this? Okay. I feel like wayfinding at the hospital is vital. And I don't see any safety concerns for the location of these signs. I actually really like seeing more wayfinding at the hospital, just because the campus setting is confusing when you're there, and sometimes going to the hospital you're already stressed, so you want to know where you're going. Everything I saw looked like it was an identifier or wayfinding, and I think it's a great addition.
I agree. I think the signs, they're subtle. Your image with the yellow was bold, but whenever you look at the images that they have where it's just text on, the contrast is not high. It looks good. It looks like it's really attractive.
Right, because the ones on the pedestrian bridge are only 5.6 square foot apiece. So it's not excessive size-wise.
If there's no more discussion,
Okay.
anybody entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in section C and D of the staff report, with the condition that the applicant obtain a variance from the Board of Adjustment from the prohibition of signs in the right-of-way for signs 1, 3A, and 3B.
I'll second.
Okay.
It passes.
Okay, then I'll provide a recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustments for a variance from the prohibition of signs in the right-of-way for signs 1, 3A, and 3B.
Second.
And that passes as well.
Oh, wow. Before I forget it, Keith, if you look at what the vote is, it still has Gary and Rosie on there for some reason. So you might make a note and we'll try and figure out what the heck is going on, because that, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll move to item C, which is DTCA 25-00042, Part 2 at 1210 North Hudson Avenue.
Okay, bear with me, I can't see the arrow. Okay. Laura Griggs, Planning Department. And let me, now, there we go. So we are looking at 42, pardon me, which is this one? Yes. You all have seen, I think several of you were on here when we came through several years ago when they were proposing the major renovation of the buildings, and at that time they went through the process to make this a 3-building historic district in an effort to get tax credits, and that kind of didn't happen, unfortunately. But it is still on the National Register. So as you can see, this has already been constructed. It actually kind of helps me with some of the pictures, and so I'm just going to walk you through the pictures. Normally, we are extremely cautious about additions on historic buildings at the front of the building, and the guidelines talk about it being set back. But when you look at the fact that we have a new building that's been built next door, it used to just be a parking lot, and the fact that the screens and the cover that were put on are not any taller than the adjacent building to the north, which is attached to it, it kind of puts it in a different context. And so I was wanting to show the views as you look down the street. How does it look? Does it stand out or not? And you can see the Seaber down the street there on the left. So to me, this is a really good one because you can see how it keeps basically the same height on the attached buildings as it's coming down. And then we have the taller office building that's been built on the corner. So in one case, depending on where you're standing, you don't necessarily see it. One of my favorite parts of this project is the building that used to be the movie theater, and they had these really fantastic pictures of like the first, when the grand opening, and they were, having the movie and stuff like that. But anyway, so in this particular one, I mean, it's really difficult. You can tell something is there, but it doesn't stick out in front of those. So all three of these buildings are clearly different, built at different times. And when they did the renovation behind where this rooftop deck is, they did a two-story addition, so that's behind it. And the original approval included this rooftop deck, but it was just out there exposed. And as you can imagine, in the Oklahoma heat and sun, I'm not sure how used that was, how often it was used because of the heat. So you have the new building on the corner, which, that's weird. That almost makes it look like it's a Flatiron building. Obviously, we know it's not. And across the street. So I am going to go back to the very first one, this one right here. So when I originally was called about this at some point last year, that was before it was built, and I expressed my concern, and I said, we're going to have to take it to the commission because we have a guideline that talks about additions on historic buildings. We had a one that probably Tony's the only one that was on Broadway, south of 6th Street, that it took months, and they pushed it back, the addition they wanted to put on the top, but they did push it back one bay, and you could clearly see, okay, it's back one bay, so it's not up at the street. This one's different because it's not an overly tall building, it's just a one-story building. If it was sitting there by itself, I think it would be more obtrusive to the building than the fact that it's attached to two other buildings, and we have a new multi-story building basically next to it. So staff included the guideline about additions on historic buildings from the rehabilitation guidelines that we use. So that publication suggests that rooftop additions may need to be set back from the street facade by some distance, possibly one structural bay from the exterior face of the existing building, in order to respect the character of the building and the street frontage context. So, as I originally said, this was a one-story structure. It has a two-story addition on the back, which you can see in this picture. Even though you're supposed to look at this as though this work hasn't happened, it kind of helps you see what is the impact if you were to approve it without seeing it. My staff report would have probably been totally different because I would not have realized, oh, it doesn't really, I'm not going to say ruin, but it doesn't really stand out as, to me, being objectionable on top of this historic building. And I think part of that is because of that multi-story office building, which is just to the south of this. Also, the proposed work is reversible. It could all be removed, and that is the main reason why staff is supporting this, because it could be taken down tomorrow if it needed to be, and it would still be what it was when you guys approved it several years ago. So because of that reason, staff is recommending approval of this. We do have somebody representing the application from this business if you had questions for them. Or do you have questions for staff?
So just to be clear, that kind of this whole addition was kind of done after the fact? Like it was, like when the building was renovated and we did the two-story addition in the back, there was like no deck, it was just kind of open.
The rooftop deck was part of the original approval. So there was doors to get to the rooftop deck, and that was listed, but it was uncovered. It was just a rooftop deck.
Okay.
So they were able to put chairs and tables
Okay,
out there
gotcha.
and use the space.
Okay, perfect.
So it's just the metal pergola and the screening that is the addition that we're.
Yeah, and there's other pictures that were attached to the application that the owner provided to me, because I asked for them, so you could actually see from the viewpoint of when you're on it, what stuff looks like. And so there's perforated metal, which is an allowed material that we have. So it's not like they're using materials that we don't allow either.
Any additional questions? No. Anybody from the audience that would like to speak on this? I have a question, actually. What is the roof of the pergola material? Is it metal, mesh, or is it a fabric?
Hang on, let me look at that.
Because the renderings show more metal beams basically going across, but this looks like it's a fabric, so I'm just curious.
I can speak to that. I'm Elizabeth Maxwell. I'm one of the owners of the Goose. It is
I'm sorry to interrupt. Do we need addresses as well? Yeah. Could you please?
Them, just their names
Just the
printed
names,
is
okay.
fine.
Great. Sorry, go ahead.
It is a fully metal covering. We don't have any fabric covering. You can see we just have the fairy lights, and then we have that slatted steel roof with the mesh covering on the west side.
So Kayla, did you see the picture? I'm gonna, I have a black and white version, but.
Yeah, we're just looking at that. It's pretty dark in our.
Yeah, I know.
It's open slats. Okay.
Oh, yeah. If you look at this photo and you look at the ground, you can see that it's open.
Great. Okay, that answers my question.
Thank you.
The picture on the screen is very deceiving. It looks like fabric.
I never noticed that, but you're 100% right.
Not intentional.
I think probably it is our job to protect old buildings, but it's also our job to encourage walkable, livable, lively communities. So I am in favor of this. It's a great thing for a great tenant that's trying to do great things in our city. I am vehemently opposed to things being done and not being asked permission ahead of time. And so I think through that lens, a verbal tongue lashing against the owner of the building, but I am pro the project. I just wish they would have asked for it ahead of time.
I have had that discussion with him.
I'm just saying it
Got it.
verbally.
Oh, I know.
I'm just saying it verbally on
Have to
here,
say it out
so
loud.
if it has to happen,
Yeah.
and it's like, they
Yeah.
got away with it this time.
I echo the sentiments. Love the space, looks great. Hot Oklahoma summers definitely need some covering on that second level. So definitely in favor of this.
Great. Can we entertain a motion then?
I'll make a motion to approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in section C and D of the staff report.
Brandon, second.
Thank you.
Motion passes.
Give you
Brief pause,
We'll
please.
take a brief pause as well.
Gary disappeared on this one.
Pardon?
Yeah, he did.
Oh,
Look at that.
Keith is fast.
I'm also not used to making motions and seconding things, so I'm just like hesitant. I'm like, oh yeah, I can do that now.
You play a crucial part, though.
Yeah, always.
Did you ever watch Stephen Colbert, The Tip of the Hat?
Our screen is still showing the pass of the last motion. Our screen still shows the passing of the last motion, so we can't move forward as well. There it is. Okay. So we will resume for item D, DTCA-25-00057, Part 2, at 900 Northwest 10th Street. Laura?
Thank you. This application originally came in for some other work that was going on, and in conversations with the contractor, he mentioned that they had painted the building. So I'm going to go through these pictures first. This is it's on the corner. And it's actually a two-story building, although from this view, it looks like it's one story. It has a tucked in, we'll see that here in a minute. So this is the view from 10th Street. So it has a lower level. We were just looking at actually, we were looking at the second floor, although it looked like the first floor. You saw this, I don't know how many of you were on it. We had a medical marijuana dispensary that came in for signage, and the old sign code only allowed one sign per tenant in this zoning district. And they already had the sign on the east facade, and they wanted to put a sign on this facade, and then they wanted it bigger. And they got approved for a smaller sign, and they had to get a variance, and they never went through the process to get a variance. I don't know if the sign was ever put up, but they're no longer in the building. So, once again, they've already painted it, but you're supposed to look at this as though it's not painted, which is really difficult to do in this situation. I did some close-ups, and the reason I did some close-ups is there's some areas in here, specifically on the right column, about a fourth of the way down, where some of the brick, the face of the brick is already spalled off. So I'm not really sure what the issues have been with this building. I took this one because I thought it was interesting. If you look through the door, you'll see the brick that wasn't painted because of the structure of this building. Part of the brick is on the inside. And this whole lower entrance was that way, which I wasn't expecting because I figured it would all be painted, but the inside part's not. So these are the pictures I took previously of the building, just so to give you an idea. It was a multicolored brick building, which was pretty typical of the time when that building was constructed. And so looking west, and you see the building there on the left, and then this is south. We have some new townhouses that have been built. Kind of catty corner to the left is the parking lot that you guys approved not that long ago, so that's this neighborhood. And then this is across the street to the east. There's a small office. I think it's an attorney's office. And then catty corner is the lift. Mostly apartments, but it does have some other, so it's technically mixed use. And then the one that you can't tell is really there is directly north across the street. It's a church that's been converted into offices, but it's buried in trees, and it's really hard to see the building. It's really kind of a cool building. And then immediately to the west, there's apartments. And so I'm going to go back and land on, whoops, that view. So part of this project was already approved. They were revising the upper and lower parking lot. There's a sign. They're putting in a generator, so they had to screen the generator. They had to put a dumpster enclosure in. And so that was all approved as part one. But this piece has to come to you because of our guideline against painting unpainted brick. So part of the history I gave on this building goes back to 1999, because this was in the North Downtown, whatever that was called, way back in the day, and it went to the Urban Design Committee. And they actually created windows. They took brick out and created windows on this building, which technically, if we had been reviewing it at the time and we had the rehabilitation guidelines, we talk about not creating openings where openings didn't exist before. So, but I'm sure they did that just so you get more light on the inside of the building. I included all of the information about the painting of the unpainted brick. This building, in Phase 3, the intensive level survey of downtown indicated this building was not eligible for the National Register, and it was not shown to be part of any potential historic district. It is older now. One could probably reevaluate it, but I am not that person to reevaluate it, so I don't know if it would be eligible. In a statement from the applicant, which I provided to you with your packet, he states, "When we took possession of the building, we discovered water on the interior floors. After inspecting both the roof and exterior walls, it was determined that the issue stemmed from a failure in the waterproof integrity of the brick. To address this unforeseen condition and protect the structure, we applied a block sealer and painted the exterior walls. In evaluating this, staff feels that it's possible that sealing the brick and painting it will address the issue described by the applicant. However, it is also possible that this solution will just exacerbate the problem by sealing in moisture, which can result in the brick cracking, spalling, deteriorating, and/or efflorescing. Since the sealing and painting have already been completed, it will be impossible to easily explore other solutions. As discussed previously in this staff report, removing paint from brick can permanently damage the brick. Damage to the face of the brick can result in the brick becoming sponge-like, allowing water to soak into the brick. While there are chemical methods for paint removal, the effectiveness of those depend on the type and the condition of the brick, as well as the application of that chemical. Although the building has already been painted, you're supposed to review this as though the work has not taken place. So in that light, and going back to the scenario we had on the Paramount building that took several years to finally end up with the final solution, if you determine that it is not appropriate to paint and you deny this application, we will also need conditions attached to that dealing with the fact that it's already painted. So, but staff is concerned about potential damage to the brick from trying to remove the paint. So it's a catch-22 situation. So I gave you two options. Obviously, there's always more options because you all can come up with conditions, recommendations, whatever. And we have someone here representing the application. But do you have any questions for me?
Any questions for staff? No questions for staff.
If we were to deny this application, you're saying that we have to have some type of conditions?
Well, my recommendation is if you deny it, it does nothing for the situation. If you deny it, you're telling them not to paint it, but it's already painted.
Sure.
So when that happened with the Paramount and it got denied, they weren't told how to fix
Sure.
it, and it ended up having to come back. And in that particular case, we
That makes sense.
recommended that they explore options with professionals that do that and try to remove the paint, and they tried some of that, and it ended up doing some damage. And when they finally came back, it was leave it as is and let it fade, is the solution we came up with. They cannot
Yeah.
keep painting that one on there.
Sure.
This is a little different. It's not a mural, obviously,
Right.
but we would need to address how to remove the paint if you deny the application.
Yeah, thanks for the clarification.
Good morning. Tony Blatt, 920 West Main, on behalf of the applicant. This is, the way Laura described it was the way that it was relayed to us. We were working on the inside of the building at the time, and the conversation with the contractor and Laura were going through several items that were happening on the outside of the building, and in passing, the comment was made of, hey, we painted the building. And that started the conversation between Laura and the contractor, and when the contractor brought that to our office, I said, I understand exactly what that means, and it's a pretty good-sized deal, so I need to go and speak to the commission in order to understand what direction would you like for us to take. We did go out and walk the building to see, do we agree that there was something going on? And the facade pictures that Laura included in the packet, we actually have those going around the building in not the majority of situations. The worst is probably the chimney. It's the majority of the chimney is that kind of spalling brick. Other places, it's sporadic, but it's showing that there was something that was happening with the brick before it was painted. I don't know what that was. If I was sitting in a position of being asked what to do here, I would be concerned with those photos that we would rip the face off if the brick immediately beneath was already influenced by whatever factors was causing that to occur. But we understand then at the same point, we are coming for whatever the commission decides that we should do as the next step. And that could be that we shall leave it and not touch it, not paint it, not do anything at this point forward. I don't know in a building that's painted monolithically like this, not a mural, what that means. So from the standpoint of an applicant, I am curious from the commission's standpoint, is there some direction that we should take to move this to the next step? I'm happy to answer any questions about timing or process or irony or admonishment.
I've dealt with a little bit of sprawling brick just from a residential standpoint, and it was always that you seal it and kind of do your best to continue to maintain that. There's some homes in Venice and Cleveland neighborhoods that have a lot of sprawling bricks. I don't know if it was just a time period or the location of where it was fabricated, but that was my only kind of take just from a residential standpoint.
Can you go back in the pictures and show the spalled brick? Can you go back 2 pictures?
Go this way?
So that's on that lower portion,
That's-
all
yeah.
that spalled brick, and then it's also on the chimney. So it's in highly exposed, soaking conditions.
The north, I would say north face is not drying out fast enough on days in which moisture was coming off of the parapet and wetting the face and then freezing at night. That's my north face understanding. There's some, when you transition from the east side down from upper level to lower level, there's kind of an enclosed stair, and along the bottom where that brick hits the walking surface, again, packed snow, something sitting there, soaking into the brick, and then freezing at night. I can see that. Chimneys do this occasionally because of just their exposure, but there are places, other locations that didn't necessarily, like just right in the middle of one of the facades, something. That didn't give me something that I could immediately grasp as to why.
And it's a lightly structured, sheathed and brick veneer building. It's not a monolithic, like triple wide brick building.
I didn't ask that. Is it got stud wall on the inside or is it? Oh, okay. I should know that answer, but it's a multi-wide brick building.
What year was it built?
1963.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
I will say one thing that will help the brick is the ivy gone. There's a lot of chemical reaction that happens with the ivy as well as it tries to root into the brick. I think it's beautiful in the brick, but it will help with the longevity of the life of the brick, not having the ivy growing and trying to break it down.
Hypothetically, if this building was painted at some point and we've been experiencing rain in this month, have we been experiencing any water intrusion in the building? Hypothetically, if the building was painted?
Could you?
No, it's dry on the inside of the building.
Thank you.
So I think my take would be is that obviously it's already painted. We deny the application, but just make sure that they maintain this. That would be my take. Because I also don't want to set the precedent that we approve painting a building.
And we're going to have another one come up in September.
Yeah.
But if we deny an application, inherently you can't close out a CO, a certificate of
Well, it's not,
occupancy.
it's not tied, so painting the building is not tied into the permit. I've already signed off on the permit. I'll sign off on any fence permit comes in for their screening on the generator and on the dumpster. I signed off on their sign permit yesterday. So painting a building does not require a permit, so because of that, it didn't hold up their permit.
So in theory, if we deny.
I don't know, what's,
So
Right.
here's one way to look at this. If you deny their application, and that's all you do, there's a code there. someone could call it in as violating
Yeah.
because they painted unpainted brick
Sure.
and would be going through the cycle, and you would just
Sure, but
keep doing this.
we'd have to give a condition that,
How, yes.
I know the problem is that it's already painted, right? So we
Yes.
can't then just say, we can't just like deny it without a condition. The condition would then have to state that they technically have to maintain the,
You could deny it, but understand that the painting has already taken place, and that with this denial, what you're saying is, it's painted, they cannot maintain the paint, I believe is what you're talking about. I
Yeah, my
thought that's what
concern
I
is
heard
that
you
they-
guys saying.
no, my concern is that I actually do want them to maintain the paint though, because I
Okay.
don't want the water intrusion in the
So then, in that particular case, you
building.
wouldn't want to deny it, then you'd want
Okay.
to approve it.
Yeah, okay,
And I guess you could look at approving it because of the documentation that was provided for the problem with the water intrusion into the building, and that this was a fix that was landed on to stop that problem, or
My-
some
Well, I can get us
some
out of this.
architecture word.
well,
I can get us out of this.
Okay.
We could also discuss continuing it and having the applicant provide professional documentation
Yes.
that the sealing of the building is integral to the long-term longevity and health of the building, and that we have to approve it to maintain this.
perfect.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And then we're not saying that it's okay to paint brick just because
Yeah.
we want to, that it is, the applicant has presented the information that says we have to.
Right, because my concern is that this project complies with the regulations and guidelines of downtown design district. Yeah, but it doesn't, so.
Well, because you could have a motion to approve it acknowledging that it does not comply.
Okay.
And then you could list all the other issues, but I think I heard another one which was continue it, and you're asking for some documentation.
You're saying we can approve the application even and state that it does not comply?
Well,
I think you can. I think you got, I mean, that could be appealed. I'm not sure who's going to appeal that
Sure.
decision. And I think you can say something to the effect of, if you wanted to, it's the same idea as what you're getting at. It's rather than do that, your other option is to get it done today, move for approval. It doesn't comply with the regulations or guidelines. However, given circumstances A, B, and C as presented, it is in the best interest of the building, the city, whatever,
Yeah.
that this be approved.
Okay. I think I could.
I do have one more question, actually. In the staff report, and you read it today, actually, Laura, about the story of the water. It does say that after inspecting, and I'm curious who the inspector is, if it was just the owner or if it was a certified inspector or an architect. Who was the one inspecting?
That saw the water, general contractor.
General contractor. Okay. Are there photo evidence available?
Do you have a photo of the water in the building? We do not have photos.
Okay.
Just
So-
the standing water in the basement.
Okay.
So then we could approve the application, but still kind of ask for that to be submitted to staff. I forgot the wording on that.
I think what we're trying to say is we can approve the application in spite of the fact that it does not comply with the regulations of the Design District Zone Ordinance as referenced in section C and D of the staff report, under the condition that the building's skin was failing, and the only way to save, the evidence presented to us, the only way to save the building was to seal and paint the brick to prevent water intrusion and to maintain the longevity of the building.
Correct.
That's basically what we're trying to say.
Right. Do you also want them to still provide?
I'm fine.
Okay. Do you want to make that motion? Just say
so
literally the exact same
have
thing.
we asked if anybody else wants to?
Oh, sorry, yes.
Anybody else in the audience that would like to speak on this?
Okay.
Okay.
It's going to be hard giving up that role over there.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the application in spite of the fact it does not comply with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District zoning ordinance as referenced in section C and D of the staff report, under the condition that the evidence that was presented to us today indicates that the skin of the building was failing and moisture was getting into the building because of that failure, and the only way to protect the long-term health of this building was to seal and protect future water intrusion through that brick skin.
Brandon, second.
And I will listen to the meeting and
We currently
Get that
don't
voting.
have voting on our screens. The verbal,
Brandon,
Yay.
Copeland,
yay.
Schmid,
Yep.
Motion passes.
Yep. Thank you. Also fair.
Okay, we'll move to item number 7, other business. Did you need something, Laura? You gave me a motion. Okay. It will be item A, CE-01143 at 823 Northwest 12th Street. We will go to Laura.
hello again. Laura Griggs, Planning Department. This is one of those times where you all are going to be making a recommendation to the Planning Commission on a request to, CEs are requests to close some type of an easement or right-of-way. And in this case, it is, and I have approximated the area on these, so just so you know, so you can kind of see where they are. And so this was a request to close a portion of Northwest 12th Street at the on the north side of the intersection Northwest 12th and Francis. So we have really wide right-of-way, and I'm going to get into that discussion in a minute. And so it's this particular area is what we're talking about, approximately. I want to draw attention to what's happening this direction, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And so these are just some different views of that area. And basically what this is saying is the property, you can see how far back from the sidewalk the property line is currently. And this is looking westward toward Classen, where we have the new coffee shop going in. And then this is looking north, the subject property's on the right. What I will point out is that building on the left, that this is an older picture, that building on the left is no longer there. It burned and got demolished, unfortunately. And that's the building that's gone, that's across the street. And so this is directly across the street to the south where we have an enormous parking lot and that tall medical office building. And that is to the southwest. And I will go back to, that one's probably the best one. So on the original plat, it showed an area, and they called it the park line. Luckily, my boss does research, because we're geeks that way, and she had looked and researched into some of the old plats that we have, and the park line was an area where trees were planted. Well, then when you end up, because this plat was approved in 1902, and not too many people had cars back then. Then when you ended up into an era where you have cars started parking in that area, which one of the things she looked at said that's where that term came from, because it was the park line, and so cars were parking there. And so the plat indicates a reserved area or public space, typically used for parks, recreational area, or other public facilities. So this area transitioned from homes, flats, small apartment buildings. And then some of those houses have now been converted into offices. And then we've had some other buildings, as you can see on the right there, where we've had newer buildings built. When I said I'm going to come back and talk about this, one of the things I want to point out is you can see that the adjacent parking lot to the east in front of that office building goes all the way to the sidewalk. So that parking lot is encroaching into the right-of-way, which actually is prohibited by the city code. All of that parking does that, as well as the one across the street. That's not really our subject, but when you're out there, you get the feel that the right-of-way isn't as wide as it is because of where all the parking lots are located. And so I just wanted to point that out, because from that perspective, the area that they're looking to acquire is either up to, or it might encroach into the sidewalk. If it encroaches into the sidewalk and this would get approved, they would obviously have to realign and reconstruct the sidewalk. So in your packet, I included some pictures that the applicant provided of what they're proposing. They haven't submitted the application yet. We've had a lot of discussions about it on that adjacent lot where they're wanting to come in and build townhouses. The biggest issue that I've got is there is no alley that runs down the east side of that lot, so they will all be front-loaded with driveways. And so we've had a whole bunch of discussion about that. What does that look like? How does that impact the sidewalk? Nobody can park in their driveway. There isn't enough room. That whole type of thing. The person that owns this property is the same person that renovated the old apartment building that is immediately north of it on 13th Street. If you've not been down there, we had that one get renovated, as well as the one that's on the west side of the street, which is fabulous. We didn't lose those historic structures. They've been renovated, hopefully fully occupied in that desirable area to live. So the request is to close and subsequently vacate, which is through district court, a 50 by 17.29 foot portion of the street right-of-way. So the distance from the property line toward the street that they're wanting is 17.29 feet. As I said, they have not submitted the application. This would allow for several options for them. One would be potentially another townhouse unit. Another would be yard area or whatever. At this point, we're making a recommendation to Planning Commission just on the CE. So this really has nothing directly to do with the proposed project, which you will see when it comes in. So the odd thing about this is 12th Street, as platted, is 100-foot wide. You typically don't see a 100-foot wide right-of-way in what had been, it was platted as residential back then. You wouldn't even see 100-foot if this was commercial on a street like this, because the street goes like 2 blocks one way, and then it tees into something else. You get down the other way, and it's Classen, and you can't easily go across Classen. And so somebody's going to be going north or south. So that is extremely unusual. As I mentioned, as you can see, the parking lots east and south currently encroach in the platted right-of-way. That condition was in place prior to 2007. So it wasn't anything that this commission actually reviewed or approved. And I can't guarantee that it actually got approved, but it is what it is out there. While parking lots currently encroach into the platted street right-of-way, allowing buildings to be located within the current street right-of-way would be permanently visually disruptive to the streetscape and block, and would create the potential for an inconsistent street wall at such a time as future development occurs at neighboring properties. While acknowledging that 100-foot of street right-of-way is not the norm for a neighborhood-type street, that condition has existed at this location for 123 years. It may be appropriate to evaluate whether the right-of-way for the entire street should be reduced, but staff does not believe this should be done on a lot-by-lot approach. And because of all of that, staff does not support this request, and we do recommend denial. We have had CEs in the past where you have included conditions. It's just a recommendation. So you can do that. That doesn't necessarily mean that it would get picked up and become a condition of the CE, but you do have that option if you so desire to do that. And we have someone representing the application here. Do you have questions for staff?
Is there any other place in the city that has had a similar right-of-way? I'm thinking over off of Hudson, there are some spaces, there's some areas 90 degrees to Hudson that have the wider right-of-way, like by Not Your Average Joe, right to the north of it. Is there any other place where the city has granted back right-of-way that was similar to this?
The only ones that I can think of, I don't know if it's technically Plaza or, I think that's Plaza, is we've had some right-of-way that has been closed and vacated, and they've become part of parking lots. And so the adjacent owner obtains the property because they've come through to close it and vacate it. It becomes part of their deed, and then they can start charging for parking. Those are the ones that I'm familiar with. I mean, obviously, throughout the city, they get requests when something gets built and a corner encroaches on a setback or across the right-of-way. You recently had one, up around in Midtown, that Midtown Renaissance came in that involved several streets, right at the traffic circle, involved the old bakery. And one of the issues there was when they went through the process to get that put on the National Register, the parking lot was considered contributing. And part of the parking lot encroached in the right-of-way, and some of the overhangs encroached in the right-of-way. And so they were coming in and vacating some right-of-way in that area. So I guess that is similar to what you're talking about.
But they were vacating right-of-way so that they didn't have existing non-compliant, and they were not putting back buildings or structures or something that would be...
Not at that location. Part of that overall CE included some areas to the east of that where they had not built on them yet, but they knew they were going to run into a situation of potentially encroaching on the right-of-way. And in that case, it was one of the things they had to do on the Merle building was they had to build a retaining wall, and it ended up in the right-of-way. That was part of that overall CE, because Public Works did not like the fact that they had to build a retaining wall that was in the right-of-way, and they said, you need to vacate it because it needs to be your property. We don't want it. And so because of that, they know they're going to have an issue on the undeveloped portions of that block. So that they were vacating in anticipation of the issues they were going to have.
And staff's opposition is because they don't want an anomaly of a built structure out to a property line. If this was... That staff's opposition is they do not want a built structure out to the property line, and they also do not want parking spaces in the front at that location.
That's actually what I don't quite understand why yet.
So
it would
one of the
be
concerns staff has is if this came in for the entire block, then that would provide for a similar potential building up to the sidewalk, which is what we see in downtown because that's what we want. And if you do just a piece of it, if you piecemeal it, and we end up building here, and then beyond it, the right-of-way is back that way, we won't end up with consistency. But that was just staff's opinion. In your packet was some information that they provided us that did not show another unit at the corner. It showed a layout that they're currently utilizing, and showed potentially what they were saying it was going to look like.
And that's actually what I am looking at right now on my screen. And if anybody is in the audience, I'd like to speak on this as well. And I would like to know for sure if, now I know we're not necessarily looking at your development you're proposing, but it looks to me that it is out of the right of way. On 12th? Is that the one we're looking at? They're looking for this one too.
They want this.
Is this townhome there?
They want the exact same size, not another ton.
They want another townhome.
We can call them
Okay.
up if we need. So while he's
I
signing
want
in.
to hear that, I think.
While he's
Yeah.
signing in, let me just
Okay.
say that what they provided was laid out now
Okay.
and does not include this additional right-of-way. So if you look at that drawing that Caleb was talking about, and you see the southernmost unit, the area that they're proposing to close and vacate is immediately south of that, between the sidewalk and the building. And so that is where they would potentially have enough room, if it was closed and vacated, to have an additional unit there.
I think that's what I was looking for.
Okay.
Totally understand. Yeah, the first site plan you're looking at is what we're currently working with.
Can you
These-
identify yourself?
Sorry, Weston Dennis Studio Architects. Good morning. Yeah, the first site plan you're looking at, absolutely right. It's the 8 units. It's what we're looking at currently. We've paused design briefly just to explore this opportunity to see if we can get a little more density or a better project out of it. The second site plan shows where we've got a little yellow box there that says where we could potentially explore something else in that zone. And the rendering is, of course, with our 8-unit scheme currently.
Thank you. I think that was the missing information I was looking to hear.
No problem.
Any other questions?
So when we close right of way, we are granting free land to
No.
someone?
This is a two-step process. When the city closes, that is saying we're closing it for the public use. They could fence it, because we end up with people closing and not going beyond, okay? So us closing it does not give property away. They would then have to take the documentation approved by council, which could have conditions at that point. They go to district court, and that's where you end up with all the discussion with all the utilities. Are there utilities? We got to get easements, whatever. Most of the time, we're dealing with alleys, where we have sewer and where OG&E is and gas or wherever. And so a lot of times, it gets closed and vacated, but there's utilities in there. This particular one, I'm not really sure what's there. Usually water's on the street. And there is the ability, if somebody's coming through, that they, the developer / property owner, can pay for and have things relocated, redesigned, whatever, which is what we have going on in some other cases around downtown with some areas where they've closed and vacated things. But city closure does not give the property away. Vacating, it does. And if it was an alley, an entire width of an alley gets split down the middle, half goes to each side. This particular case, it would all go to this adjacent property owner.
I guess what I'm trying to say is a piece of land that uniquely sits one additional townhouse that will be for sale or for lease, but will generate revenue. Eventually, the city will receive no financial compensation for basically giving developable land away to a developer.
Well, only
The
the
only
county
thing I
with
would-
taxes.
The only thing I would say is that the applicant owner foots the bill for the process. The CE process does involve some documentation that had to be submitted in with the application to subdivision and zoning. The big expense is when you get to district court, and yes, they have attorneys involved, and it's a thing. So from that perspective, the city doesn't pay for that other than staff time involved, because municipal counselors' staff is involved on vacations, correct? Okay. But there is no fee involved with obtaining the property directly, which I believe is what your question is.
I mean, when you look at the map, 12th Street here terminates at Chartel, and then it terminates over at Western. It's 2.5 city blocks of very strange city. I would say Francis is the stronger access because it connects all the way down towards the jail, all the way up into past 13th. So from a city making perspective, creating a urban condition along Francis that is similar to the lift to the south, I think is a strong strategy. 100-foot right-of-way is strange. I would just say that, we're not looking at this proposal, but we know what this proposal is showing, which is an additional townhouse will be built on this very specific size piece of land, and that when and if a proposal comes in, we might be very, if the city is giving away land, the city needs to be getting something in return for doing this. And so I think we're going to be very strategic in the way that we review this from an urban design and landscaping and treescape perspective, is how I would look at this. I think it's a unique opportunity to create urban developable land. I think it's strange to piecemeal it, but we can't ask the applicants to the east to also be a part of this.
When we think about setting up overlays in other districts, we do so with a vision in hand, and then we live to that. So, I mean, I hear about taking away the right-of-way, but I would be to the point of, I would prefer that it be the full length, and I would prefer that it be that when that right-of-way is vacated, this is what the expectation of that entire stretch of property from Classen all the way to, is it Francis? The full length.
I wanted to land,
But I don't
one
know
thing
that-
I'll point out is, in a lot of cases, these older subdivisions, there was this slope up to the house, okay? This particular lot doesn't have it, but when I look to the west, where I still have a few of the houses that have been converted, I still have that feel going on. But when you go the other direction, there is a slight slope, but it is not as dramatic. And so if this if all the way down here had that dramatic slope, I think there would have been more a concern about that, because that does really impact the feel that you get in that area. I know from the standpoint of the HP area, they don't support cutting down those slopes. I mean, they were built that way, and that's what they want to see. But we don't have that down here.
We're debating things that are outside of the request.
Yep.
The request is vacate this property. I don't feel like we have enough information to be able to make a decision to vacate this property as it sits in its current request.
You have forwarded with no recommendations before and included discussion items so that they would understand why you didn't have a recommendation. That one's been a while, and I can't remember which one it was, but
Well, also the question is there, how much effort does it take to add one more unit to the end in your kind of design scheme? Can you take it back away in the event that we say no and it gets denied, right? So is there a reason why we wouldn't see this entirety, the project as an entirety, and then you say, oh, also we want to do this?
so they could not come to you with a unit on the piece of right-of-way. Let me take that back. Staff would not have wanted them and would not have supported them coming to you to show a piece, a unit in the right-of-way, not knowing if it could be closed and vacated, because that doesn't serve anybody's purpose.
Sure, okay.
Unlike somebody coming through with a project that has a sign in the right-of-way where you approve it with a condition that they go to the Board of Adjustment. And if the Board of Adjustment denies it, they deny it and they can't get the sign. So,
Okay, that makes
that's
sense.
kind of a simplistic comparison, but
No, that makes sense.
Yeah, Laura, so just so I understand what you're saying, we viewed this as step one to potentially try and explore another unit on the scheme and tried to provide a little bit of context as to what we're doing, just to clarify things.
Now granted, it gets you more the density that we're obviously wanting in the downtown design district.
Sure.
It gets things out to the sidewalk, out to the street. There hasn't been, except for Starbucks, we haven't had new construction in this neighborhood in a while. It is just around the corner from another 3-lot historic district where the bed and breakfast is, where you had the portico share that got enclosed that we spent months on. So that is this neighborhood. St. Anthony's is around the corner. So, but just to the south a couple of blocks, we do have the Lift Apartments. This neighborhood is a mix of new and luckily some of the old stuff that we still have.
Yeah. I think I'd be okay with vacating this.
I want it as part of a longer,
plan.
bigger, I'd like for there to be some consideration on vacating more than just this, if that's the intent. With the understanding that there's an expectation, right now there's walkability that's being provided on the west side of this, and there would be an expectation that you'd have exactly that same kind of edge. It would not be, I don't think that there would be, I would not be as inclined to say yes if I thought the sidewalk was going to be right next to a vertical face with 30 inches of landscaping. So that's the part that I'm saying I don't mind the concept of this being studied as a part of a bigger planning movement, but I wouldn't want there to be a
Singular
takeaway that, oh, okay, you said yes, that means I can just.
Well, let me just say this. The certificate of approval would have to come through, and that would be a topic that you all have the ability to weigh in on, vote on, direct, whatever. There's obviously room between the curb and the sidewalk currently if the sidewalk had to get shifted so that it wouldn't have to be up adjacent to it.
Do you want to see farther east and also then on the south side of 12th? Would it look like if you're closing and vacating both?
I'd love to have that happen because it's not serving the purpose that it was originally intended to do, and the parking lots are abhorrent. And so, but that's not what this application is. So this application is one person, one lot, a request. And if we say yes, I think that the intent is that yes is really with the hope that it will go all the way to the east and it will cross the street to the south. Then it will become the kind of urban street that we would like to see. But we're not able to say that. We're able to say yes or no.
You could include discussion.
That discussion is what I would like to see be transferred to Planning Commission.
So you have in the past forwarded recommendations and asked the Planning Commission to listen to the meeting. I think it would be better if we forward words versus please listen to the meeting. And I know the applicant has been wanting to say something.
Oh, no, I just wanted to piggyback off of what you were saying as far as this being the one single case of this on that street. That's absolutely correct. However, Laura did mention at the beginning that the lot immediately to the west has been demolished, scraped, and if we were able to get the 9 units,
This one here. Yeah.
there's a very big interest between my client and the owner of that property in potentially doing something similar. So creating more of that urban condition that you're talking about wanting to promote there.
That was a house that had been converted to a law office, and it had a detached garage on the north, and they both burned. The house actually burned 2 or 3 times, and they were both declared dilapidated and demolished, unfortunately. And I hate that because it was a really cool house. So that's the piece that he was just referring to.
Yeah, so I guess my point being it could sort of spur on some
But I
knock-on
will
effects
say,
here.
this is one of those that you can see with the sidewalk and the steps, This is one of those that slopes up. So this one is different than the one before you today because it doesn't still have that slope. Where it sloped up, the sidewalk went up to the house, and so the property's built up, which is what we have going west from here.
So, to not go around and around, I'm inclined to say yes with conditions. And the conditions are that this is not intended to be an anomaly. It's intended to be part of a bigger planning effort that extends all the way to the east and across the street to the south. It would make those parking lots, which are currently existing non-compliant, it would make them compliant. But the intent would be that ultimately this would become an urban residential streetscape for the full extent of 12th. And for me, it goes all the way to Classen, but I realize there's some topography issues that would have to come into play there. So how does that get written in a motion?
I would say that.
I would listen.
Could that be scribed, and then my motion is to approve?
Recommendation.
Recommend approval with the comment,
With comments
and I
provided.
will listen and put it down verbatim.
Okay. Okay. Any other discussion?
No.
Any other discussion? Anybody else from the audience?
Thank you.
Okay.
No. My motion as stated.
For recommendation of approval. Okay.
Brandon, second.
Here we go.
It's still not coming up. Yay.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
the motion passes.
Thank you. Apparently, there must have been a meeting scheduled right after ours started, because I've got people out here, so I have really no idea what's going on. But anyway, Katie's off this week, so she's sorry she's missing you. No, we have not heard anything from the mayor's office, for those of you who are getting ready to ask.
He's been a little busy, huh?
Yeah. And no, we don't have an application yet on the big reveal that was yesterday, but I would anticipate that it should be coming in soon. We didn't see it until yesterday, so we weren't holding out on you. And our fees go up tomorrow. So for those of you who submit applications, some of the fees are increasing tomorrow, some of them more significant than others. So, and we have a meeting next month.
Okay. Any comments from commission members? Okay. Our next regular commission meeting is Friday, August 21st, 2025. New applications were to be submitted by staff by 4 p.m. Tuesday, July 15th, 2025. Revisions and information on continued projects are to be submitted by Tuesday, July 22nd, 2025, and we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Your face looks